So tonight we're going to talk about all kinds of house rules and, as Jim would call it, house rules and home brews. First and foremost, straight out of the gate, let me introduce everybody. With me tonight are my good friends Todd, Artie, and Jim. Gentlemen, how are you doing this evening?
Wonderful.
Doing great. Thanks for inviting me back, Jay.
Anytime, Jim. Anytime. Yeah, I think what we're going to cover first is a rule that it was not included in 5th edition, was included in earlier editions, and we like to call that call shots. And so we recently implemented it back into our campaign, my Athalia campaign, and the way it works in my game is the way it worked in 2nd edition, which is you get a -4 to your attack when you then roll damage and get double damage. So, but Jim has an idea.
Yes. First of all, if you're going to do house rules, I think they got to be simple, because if you make them too convoluted, it just starts getting muddied and nobody wants to do it because they don't really understand it. So I thought the simplest way to handle it is, okay, if you're going to do a call shot, and you can do a call shot as a bonus action, because, you don't want to just randomly do call shots all the time. And how are you going to keep that under control? Every time you want to do a hit, you got to do a call shot. So I think there's got to be something you have to give up. So you got to give up your bonus action, and you have to do it at the cost of an attack die. For example, if you have advantage, you would have to roll it with that as a regular shot, as a regular attack, just 1 die. And if you don't have an advantage, then you have to roll it with disadvantage. So, the rule is basically, if you want to do a call shot, it's as a bonus action at the cost of an attack die. So all you know is that you're going to do if you have advantage, it's going to be 1 less die. If you don't have advantage, you're going to have to do it at disadvantage. If you already have disadvantage, it's going to be double disadvantage, which is 3d20, take the lowest one.
I think that makes a lot of sense too, because it is one of those things where we've kind of seen it in our game where, like, if you're able to use it every round, you're piling, especially if you're almost a guaranteed hit at that point. I thought a thing that maybe you could add to that, maybe we could change it a little bit, would be you only get 1 call shot per target per combat, because I think after you've hit someone with a call shot, you've grabbed their attention, you're in there, they've got, you've hit them in the eye. They're very upset with you now. So it would be harder to do a call shot after that point.
But I also have another little tidbit to it also. On a miss, the target will be granted an attack of opportunity. Or if they've already used the reaction, they get advantage on you on your next roll, on their next attack. So it makes you kind of...
There's more risk involved.
There's risk. Yeah, there is risk involved. And I feel like it is kind of accurate because I did rapier fighting in SEA. Yeah, there was times when I was going to do a particular shot. I wanted to hit them right in the mask. And I would wait for that perfect opportunity. And when I kind of suckered them in, I would usually drop my sword down. They'd think I wasn't paying attention. I was lowering my guard. I was just waiting for that attack. And then the second they did, I'd flip my wrist, block their blades, and hit them with my dagger right in the mask. And I've probably got about 4 or 5 successful shots on that. But if you miss, you are kind of committing yourself.
Yeah.
And that kind of can leave you wide open if you do miss.
So that's another thing that came up, I think, last time we were talking about it, was the should call shots be melee or should they just be ranged?
I think either one.
What do you guys think?
I agree. Yeah, I think it lends itself. If you're an expert armsman, you're a melee fighter, you have that control and that ability to choose your target. Just like if you're trained in range, you have that same perception to be able to see that advantage of that shot.
The little opening, yeah.
Yeah, the little opening.
I really like Jim's addition there, and all these ideas are great. I love called shots. These rules are really cool. Adds a fun and exciting depth to it.
I was just going to say, I feel like Jim, in terms of, it does need to have risk. It does need to have some form of, if you're going to use your bonus action or if you're going at a disadvantage, that's the consequence of taking that extra moment and focusing and really trying to hit that target. but I don't want to make it too much of a penalty that you are afraid to even try it.
Right.
So I think there definitely needs to be some balance, even if it's reducing the damage from, double damage to maybe damage and a half or something to that effect.
Or like one extra die, like if you're rolling 3d6,
One extra die.
4
Yeah.
d6. Yeah. And I like, Artie, it's funny you bring that up. It is the most beautiful thing about the call shot is it kind of takes your character in that moment, and it does paint a more vivid picture, I think. And it allows the DM to as well, I think, to show what's happening in the scene and the eye shots and the gore that comes out and having that little, it's like almost like a side bonus having for a DM at least.
Yeah, and it can change the course of a fight. It can add new options and details to the fight. It has a great level of interactivity to the. You can kind of get mundane with a normal fight sometimes.
Oh yeah, there is that repetition of, everybody roll initiative and the order it's going in and you're just rolling your dice because that's your best shot of doing damage to this creature over and over again. So having little like house rules for things like call shot and other things that I think we'll come up with tonight and talk about tonight are definitely add more depth to combat because that's the most stale part of the game for me, and I've been trying to improve as I've been running this campaign and finding ways to change up the elements. But it's nice to hand over the reins to the players too and allow them to be like, okay, let's do call shot. What else can we do? And that's kind of like where I think this conversation goes tonight. Is there anything else that would improve the game? Did you guys think of any cool ones or come across any neat ones?
Well, you brought up a point a minute ago about initiative. I ran across a homebrew idea or rule set that says when you roll a crit on your initiative, instead of just going first, you have the choice of where you go in the turn order. So like if you know that, one of your melee tanks will step forward and take the attention of that opponent, then you can do your sneak attack after him and get the benefit of being in that place in that 5 foot, range in order to do that damage. So I think that's a great idea.
I think that's one that we should implement.
I concur as well. That's great.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. Because there are times, like you're talking about, when you've got a character that has like maybe a special niche and it works better after somebody else has already done something.
Yeah.
Like it works better after a tank has stepped in or something.
It almost opens the door to combo moves in a way where if you could come up with a combo system, I don't know. See, this is getting a little convoluted now. You're adding rules, but it would be neat for like two players to be able to work together to set up that so that, advantage or whatever it is, like there's even more of a bonus. That was a cool one. I think that's a really neat one, the initiative one.
In another game that we play, we have that situation where when the initiative begins, and let's say you are in the story, you're surprising the opponents. How does that initiative play into it? Are the people you surprise at disadvantage on their initiative rolls? So that logically places them behind you, or at least potentially behind you, or was maybe one of them super vigilant and was able to perceive your sneaking or your surprise round. So, there's a whole bunch of opportunities for us to sort of strategize and use, the surroundings and how we play to enrich the game. And I think this is the perfect example.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we had that come up. It was in Mike's game.
Mike's
game, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But we weren't sure how we were going to handle the surprise round.
Well, if you guys want to know how to handle a surprise round, you can check it out in this video right here.
I saw that.
But yeah, surprise is one of those things where it's just like, it gets so confusing and it takes over the table, or the virtual table in our case, where you're just spending time like being like, well, is he surprised? Is he not surprised? And do I get advantage? Do they get disadvantage? And like, that's a tough one. That's a real tough one to iron out. But I think, like you said, by using these house rules, we can kind of iron out those things and make them move a little bit faster.
So as a DM, what's your favorite way of handling, or your preferred way of handling that surprise round?
It depends on which way the roll goes. I mean, like if you're the ones attempting to surprise a group of goblins around the corner that they're there, you're pretty sure they don't, that they're not. They don't know that you're there. Then you feel like you've got the advantage. But in most cases, like especially with a Brisby, like I'm gonna give it to him. Like he's gonna sneak in, and that's why I think he would like no matter what happened, unless he rolls a 1, he's going to have the surprise attack. And when surprise happens, to me, that's before combat even begins. Like you don't even roll initiative. Like you're the one that's going in to do this. Or if multiple, attacks are being laid down all at once, if you've made your stealth checks, whether they be passive or active, I feel like that's it. Like you get that free attack and then initiative starts and then everything is, level at that point.
Great idea. In fact, that reminds me in my in-person game, we just came upon some bugbears and they were all sleeping. And so we all snuck in there and coup de grace, every last one of them, while they slept. And there was no initiative. We did have to roll a stealth roll to make it in there quietly. But then one of our mages cast silence. So we didn't even need the roll after that.
You could have danced into the room.
Yeah, exactly.
That also reminds me, or makes me think about how is the best way to handle excessive damage, like a coup de grace, or like with the called shots again. I mean, if you're going to do a called shot, you want something really massive to happen. You want to take out their eye, but then what do you do after that? Do they always have disadvantage now because they got an eyeball missing, or do they bleed out at some point with some other, another type of called shot?
You could do like damage over time where it just consistently is dropping him like a certain D, per round. But I think that really falls on a good DM shoulders at that point. That way you don't have to bog it down with rules. Like you've made the call shot as a DM. Like if Brisby has taken the eye of, an ogre or whatever, they definitely have disadvantage now as far as I'm concerned. Plus, you might get bleeding out depending on where the target was. Like if you were going for like a jugular or something, you were going for a kill shot, and you got it. I might not give you the kill, but I'm definitely gonna, he's gonna, I might the next round. Let's say somebody stabs him and did 8 points of damage, but needed 12 to kill him. I might just be like, you know what, he's not going to survive already with the blood squirting out of his throat, and I'll just say you were able to, slay it that round.
Yeah, I had a question. Like, how do you guys feel about monsters making called shots? And would the rules be similar or different?
I think fair is fair.
Oh,
Yeah,
I'd say fair is fair.
Yeah, I mean, I could see, camping out at night and having those random encounters. You're sitting ducks essentially.
Yeah.
So that would be a good opportunity for a called shot from the enemy.
Yeah. It's a matter of the DM remembering that. Yeah, that goes right out the window sometimes. But you're right. Like, I think that the monsters should have every tool available to them that the players do. I mean, if they're to survive in a fight, because sometimes, like, when you've got some crazy damage dealing a paladin and a rogue in a party going on, it's hard as a DM to kind of like manipulate the situation to allow it to stretch out the fight to be interesting enough and also not wipe the party out. So it's a fine balance, but.
Well, here, let me flip the script for a second. We're talking about damage, but what do you do about healing? Are there any house rules when it comes to healing?
I read about one today that was really interesting. I think we read the same page. There's in combat. Do you want to? You take it.
Well, the one I came across was really neat. I think it's a great idea that based on how much time you spend on the act of using a potion, it benefits you more the longer you take. So, for example, if you use a full action to drink a potion, you get max heal from that potion. So 2d4 plus 2, you get 10 points of hit points automatic. If you do it as a free action, you take that potion, you can hold it in your hand. It doesn't cost, your full action, but that hand is occupied until the next turn when you have a free action, and you can take that and use it. And the third way was like, if you use they call it an object interaction. That's when you take it and you have it in your hand, and it's you can use it as a free action the next round. A bonus action, you roll to heal. So if you use it, your full bonus action, you just roll it, and that's what you get.
It's a cool rule because it sucks when you just spent like 300 gold pieces on like a greater healing potion and you roll like 3 1s or 1 and a 3 and a 3.
Yeah.
I always thought potions they're underpowered. Yeah. I think potions should be, I think they should do more healing than they actually do.
Yeah. I would like to see that as well.
You get, I got a potion. Oh, it does 1d4. Okay, great. Especially when you get higher in levels, they become kind of, pointless. I think using objects during battle is kind of a ignored thing. Because I know I've been in a lot of encounters where you're fighting with blades, and next thing, okay, I'm going to shoot my arrow now. 9 times out of 10, actually probably 19 out of 20, the DM's never going to say, no, you're going to have to use an action to switch. Yeah, I really like the idea of doing the same with potions. Make it more rewarding, because some of these potions, just the standard healing potions, really weak.
Yeah, very much so. For the amount of damage that can be dealt to you in a round.
Yeah, you may get like 4 to 6 health back, but then you get hit and you get hit for 52.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That rule would be great in a dungeon crawl where you don't have a lot of time or places where you can comfortably rest, do a long rest. Being able to spend an entire action to get the full benefits of that potion, I think that's one I'd like to incorporate into the game. I wrote that down.
But yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing more of those kind of rules that do kind of take up more of your time. You got to, you can't always hit all the time. Sometimes you got to switch weapons. Sometimes you got to use an action to use a healing. And I think if you do that, it might add more strategy to your encounters. I think if everybody's doing that, I would say now the way our encounters go now is like we're just full on, let's go attack. And we're going to keep going until they're all wiped out. And it's, is when you start adding these other little nuances, these little extra rules, it kind of puts more thought into it. And I think it would kind of slow things down a bit to where you have to start using a little more strategy with things.
You know what I like? I love Karg, because Karg is constantly trying to intimidate, and I love that he does that, because he is this half-orc barbarian, massive, scary-looking character that should be able to intimidate the lesser foes, and I think that's kind of in using skills like that. Or for example, like you said, switching weapons, that's another thing. But I love the idea of using more skills in combat and more realistic stuff like that. As long as it's not going to take up a ton of time in the game, take your action. You have to switch from your bow. The enemies are moving in now. You're going to have to move to melee attack, and that should take your actions to do that. And so quickly we're just I drop my bow and grab my sword.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which brings me to this one. This is one that kind of plays into that, where the strategy of what you're doing in combat. I want to start adding in hidden death rolls so that no one knows if you save or if you failed, because it's too easy to be like, how many death saves do you have? Oh, I got 2. Don't worry about it. Mm-hmm. And then the fight goes on. But if you don't know, your friend could be dying. It's more, I think, role-playing aspect where you don't know anymore. You're like, do we let him die?
More realistic.
Yeah.
There are times I think it is more interesting if you don't see the rolls, but there are times when I think it's frustrating when you don't see them.
Yeah. I can think of a game where that is both beneficial for the RP side of it, but and the lack of metagaming when you know that your buddy just missed his roll and then everybody floods into the room and tries to do the exact same thing.
Yeah,
I think sometimes there's a benefit to hiding and having those whisper rolls or the hidden blind DM rolls. But when you can't see your attacks, that I think that is one that definitely needs to be remedied.
Yeah, because like when I was in SEA, when you go for attack, when you hit somebody, you got them good. It's not like, and that's the way it is with the dice. When you roll them and you see those good numbers. And I think everybody should see them, it's because it's like you see these high numbers. And it's just like when you're doing actual blade fighting, it's just, you see somebody really nail somebody good and everybody's like, oh man, that was an awesome shot. But when they're hidden, you roll and you're like, okay, how'd I do? Yeah. And also when you roll bad, I think that's kind of fun when you see somebody get a 1. You know, everybody at the table they're just like, oh my God, what's going to happen now?
Mm-hmm.
It adds an element of fun, you know, to actually see that either great shot or lousy shot.
What about saving throws? Not for the character, but like, let's say you're casting fireball at a, you know, whatever it is. Do you want to know if they saved, or should it be kind of based on the description that the DM gives you? Like, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like saving throws really, you'd either see the effect of maybe, or you may not. Like, especially with evocation spells.
I almost think that if it's anything that requires a roll dealing with strength or dexterity, you should see it.
Yeah.
Because in the real world, if somebody does something physical, you're going to see it, and you see instantly whether it was good or bad. You know, if you're watching gymnastics, if somebody slips and falls, you see it, and you know something bad happened. But yeah, if it's mental, you know, wisdom, intelligence, any of the others,
Constitution,
even charisma. I mean, like if you fail something with the charisma, you may think what you said was wonderful, but you got a bad die roll and it wasn't. But if you see that roll, you know it was because of what you said. I mean, because of the roll. You don't know if you just couldn't convince them because they're just too smart. Yeah, I think things like that I can see hiding it, because you mentioned earlier, Todd, that you know you're going to just keep rolling, or somebody else is going, oh, he rolled bad, so hey, let me step in and try. But if the person is role playing and they say something great and they fail, you don't know if it's because of the die roll or their intelligence was too high. And you know, you kind of instead of just thinking, oh, I'm going to just roll my charisma roll and see if I get lucky. It's like, oh, well, you know, what he said was great. I can't outdo that. So we're just going to say, we're going to leave it at that. Yeah. So yeah, there's definitely times when to show and when not. And I really do think if it's anything physical, dexterity or strength, you should see the roll.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's a good way of handling it, I think. There was 2 more that I had. Do you guys have any other ones that you came across?
I know there's one that I've dealt with in lots of different games, and that's critical hits. You know, when you roll a critical hit, what's the damage? Is it the dice plus an extra, or is it double damage? You know, I've played it both ways, and I'm happy to play it either way.
I think we play games where that's changed every game. One game we play it one way. One game it's double damage. The next one is extra die. You know,
I like double damage personally. It's just easy. It's just simple. It's plain. It's just like you've hit a weak spot in their armor. You've opened up a wound that's bleeding now, or something like that. Your attack should definitely cause excessive amount of damage. More than your normal.
Have you ever considered max damage? So you do roll a crit, it does the max possible damage.
Oh, yeah, I've played that before.
Yeah.
Does that seem as fun or as, I don't know, rewarding as double damage? Or
I can't remember where I saw it, but I know somewhere I'm watching a video or something where you automatically get full damage on your normal roll, then you roll again as the bonus. Like if your damage is like 2d8 plus 4, you get 20.
12 plus another roll.
Yeah. What did I say? 2d10 and yeah.
I thought you said 2d8.
Yeah. So you get 2d8.
Oh yeah,
16,
20. Yeah.
20. Okay.
Math
so
is
you roll your 2d8 and you get your 2d8 plus 4. So you get that 20 plus whatever you roll is your 2d8 plus 4.
That is neat. I like that. Yeah.
Yeah, that way, if you get, we've all had times where we got crits and you roll your double damage and you get low numbers. And it's like,
you get these.
Yeah, yes. That's happened to you, I believe.
Yes.
Yeah, that totally sucks the life out of a crit for sure.
It does. But this way, you're at least going to get your max plus an extra bonus.
Yeah, I like that a lot. So you get to roll anyways, but you also get max at least once.
And I know when we start a new campaign, that's usually one of the first questions I ask. going out of the starting block. You know, say, how are we going to deal with critical hits? Then stick with it.
I like 1 max plus a bonus roll.
I like that too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because then if you roll 2 1s on your next damage, at least you did your max with the.
Yeah. So you're getting a bonus.
You definitely feel like you hit them.
You automatically win for getting a crit. Like you get the max, but then you can also get even more potentially.
Yeah, that feels better because then I think you don't have to worry about the damage as much. You feel confident you made the hit that you intended to hit. So
yeah,
I think I've always done double damage as far back as I can remember. I don't think I've ever changed that up, but I could be wrong about that. I have been known to make mistakes from time to time.
So I really love Todd's idea about max potion healing.
Yeah.
I feel like you should. But here's an idea I just had. Maybe you have to roll to add fun. This might be not so fun, but if you have to roll a dex check or something to make sure you drink all the potion. Because if you're in the midst of a fight, you know, you're like slashing and dodging and stuff, and you're trying to drink a potion.
That is true. If you are toe to toe with someone, spending an entire action almost would require something else in a way where it's just like, whoa, hang on a second, hang on, wait. You're trying to drink it down.
Unfortunately, I got to go jump Nick's car. His car's battery's dead.
His dragon has run out of food for its belly. Go help feed it.
Well, when you were talking about combos, that's what I thought of. I thought of Cal's lightning, and then maybe somebody doing some water on the floor, or, you know, some kind of devious.
Yeah. So that I think it's brilliant too. Like say someone you select your initiative order, so you can be like, okay, Frisbee throws a bucket of water at him, and then Cal hits him with lightning, and it like totally double fries him or whatever. And
then somebody else freezes the water. And then they're frozen in place and jolted. That's a condition now in my game. Jolted. You've been jolted.
Is there any water spells?
Yeah, I think there's a druid spell of but it's not really an attack though. You can create water. Create water, yeah. Turn water into wine. I think that's a 6th level cleric spell, if I'm not mistaken. So I came across this one, which I thought was a funny one. That's called I Know a Guy. And it's basically like a situation where you've run into a riddle, you've run into a scenario where you've hit a brick wall. A player can say, I know a guy. And if he comes up with a good enough story about a guy that may have been involved with this current situation you're in, the DM can now like judge it and be like, okay, you know a guy. And that way you can kind of move things forward. I thought that was interesting. Not really a house rule, I guess, but kind of a house rule. Yeah. That's an interesting concept.
It's a good flexibility rule. I like it.
Yeah.
Kind of bullshit your way out of something.
Right. Yeah. Or maybe you do know a guy, but you don't know him so well anymore. Kind of a Lando Calrissian situation where you're like, yeah, I know him, but I don't know how well. And related to that was one called Leader Duty, which basically assigns one party member each week that if the party takes too long to decide on something, a water is filling up the room, you know, you've got limited amount of time. There's one person per party that's selected as the leader that has to make the decision. And then the following week it cycles to someone else. In the case of a situation where you're like, I don't know what to do here, the party's taking forever. What are we going to do? It goes to that one person.
I kind of like that.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, that happens in real life. You know, you're in a group and you say, hey, dude, do this.
Shit or get off the pot.
Yeah, those two are kind of a game moving and progressing type ones where it's just like, okay, we've been on this for like an hour now. Let's find a way to move forward.
Yeah.
House rules. We got anything else? I feel like we tackled a lot of the interesting ones, surprise and initiative, even character creation, how we talked about that earlier, how we do 7 and drop the lowest when we're rolling our stats.
Potion use
was another good one. Definitely one that I wrote down and I want to incorporate, as well as the critical max plus a roll. I think that's a good one. Yep. And the hidden death roll saves.
I know we haven't probably talked about this one, even though it does come up quite a bit, is the whether you are rolling thieves tools or pick lock, or I wish there was just maybe a homemade skill that's just pick lock, and that's what you roll, instead of wondering which thing you need to roll in order to unlock a door or a chest.
Well, D&D Beyond, I do that. I always create my own custom,
Yeah.
like for lock picking.
Yeah.
I'll have one at the bottom of my sheet, and I think it's dexterity anyway. So I just make it proficient, put my dexterity modifier, and let it go. But I wish it was a little more part of an actual rule set that is more defined. Things like that need to be more defined.
I almost feel like having thieves tools should just give you either advantage or like a bonus to your sleight of hand roll when you're trying to pick a lock or disarm a trap or something like that. Or not disarm a trap, but definitely pick a lock, obviously. But because it's weird that you have thieves tool as an item that you can roll to get the same result that you would get. Why do you need the thief tools if you already have the same roll as sleight of hand? I feel like having thieves tools would just make that sleight of hand easier in the case where you're picking a lock.
Yeah, what would be a good rule for that? I mean, if you're proficient, well, I guess the official kind of ruling is if you're not proficient, then it's basically something you're not really going to be able to do. I'd like to see it as if you're not proficient in it, then if you're going to try it, is that disadvantage maybe? And if you're proficient, then you're able to do it with your normal roll. And if you have expertise, you can roll with advantage maybe.
I was struck with the thought of, let's say that part of your routine when you go to a short rest is that you take your lock picks out and you maintenance them. You make sure they're all working. And then on your next lockpick roll, you get advantage because of that maintenance that or you get a bonus, or you get double bonus, or there's some kind of a normal. If you're a thief, so that's what you live by, right? The bread and the butter of your skills would be the lockpicks, and that's what you'd want to maintain.
I like that.
I mean, I would think if you have proficiency in thieves tools, you would think lockpicking, you would do that with advantage or something.
Yeah.
I mean,
or maybe it's disposable where you make a lockpick and it's good for your next go around. And maybe you roll how many lockpicks can you make, and then each one of them will give you an advantage on that particular, outing.
That's an interesting concept, because then it really brings it into play, whereas it's not just something you have on your possession that you never really, as a character, think about taking out and doing. Yeah, I dig that a lot.
If you fumble while using the thieves tools, do you break a tool?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I had that happen. Yeah, I had to go and buy some more.
If there's a trap involved, you've probably set the trap off as well.
Not representing the guild well.
We're revoking your license, buddy.
But it is funny how a lot of these skills, you get these skills, but there's no real definition of how it really comes into play.
And there's some stuff that you get on your skill sheet that you never touch throughout the game.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's funny sometimes when you're in a situation where like an Arcana roll comes up and the person who should be rolling it fails, but then like other people roll and you're like,
Barbarian rolls a 20.
Yeah.
That's why it almost should be at a disadvantage if you're not proficient.
Yeah, if you're not proficient, yeah.
I know a guy though. I know a guy.
I was thinking that it's frustrating how like vague and obtuse the rules can be, where you're like, what? That doesn't explain it. I don't know, still don't know what's going on, but maybe they're leaving it like that on purpose to try to inspire customization and make your own rules.
I like to think that way, definitely. I'd love to think that they like leave that open so that like, but it also frustrates so many players too, where it ends up where you're like spending so much time on things. I think if you look at it from that bottle half full type deal, then, or glass half full, then I think it definitely worthwhile in a way, like where it's just like, okay, they want us to kind of, let us come up with that. I dig that a lot.
Yeah. But the problem is you don't even think about it till it comes into play. And then everybody's like beating their brains out trying to think of, well, how do we deal with this? I think it's
Yeah.
great if you can plan it ahead of time, but
On the fly is tough.
you got to do it on the fly, and that's when it becomes frustrating.
I'm certainly glad that Jay, you're taking notes so that we will remember all these cool house rules and things that we've been talking about.
I don't know if we've expressed our gratitude towards you and your note taking, but it has come up
I know.
on many a podcast where I've been talking about like Todd. Thank God Todd takes notes because I wouldn't know where we'd be at this point.
Yeah, I've gotten better over the years too. Now I make sure I date everything and I title it with what campaign we're running, because there for a while it's just a stream of consciousness going down the page. And it's like, all right, where does one campaign end and the other one begin?
Well, I think we pretty much tackled a lot. Unless,
Steady aim.
what does that give you for?
It gives you advantage.
So if you have that and you do a call shot, do you get advantage on the call shot?
I would say no. Well, with the called shot that I was thinking of, that would be a bonus, and steady aim's a bonus action, so you wouldn't be able to call steady aim.
Okay. Yeah.
So that's why if you're using it, I feel like if you're using call shot as a bonus action, I know when I'm a rogue, I've got several options I can do that's going to be a bonus action. So, with my swashbuckler, there's many times I'm like really debating in my head which bonus action I'm going to go with. And that would be just one more. It's like, do I really want to do this? It's definitely not something I'm going to want to do over and over again.
The bonus action is an interesting thing that was brought about with 5th edition. That wasn't in 4th, correct?
The act of having a bonus action,
Yeah.
I want to say it was in 3.5 too.
Really?
I want to, maybe.
I never played 4th. I don't remember. Called Shots, 3rd edition, I think, was the last thing I played.
Yeah, one call shot in 4th, and that was that the one
I
that
can
was a
remember playing
-4?
called shot back when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
I've always done Called Shots.
So it's been around, but I was trying to do some research on it, and I couldn't find how early it went back.
How was it handled back then?
It seemed like it was more of an abusive type of thing, where either we didn't understand the rules at the time, but you were like using it on every attack, every round you could use it. And I don't remember there ever being a penalty. It was always just a bonus. It's like but it was difficult. I think you maybe had to roll a second attack to make sure you struck with that.
Maybe in advance, that's what it was like.
I think it was.
Is 2nd edition, I think it was, or maybe it was 3rd, that did that. That added the -4 to the attack. It was later on that was added on. I just made a rhyme. You like that?
Yeah. So I don't like the -4. No, because if you're going to do a called shot, you're aiming for a specific spot. So if you roll high and you miss it by 1 because of that -4, in the real world, you would have hit something. Maybe not that spot, but you would have hit something.
Right.
But if you do -4, then it's just a total miss. And I don't like that.
Yeah, and I mean, I was looking at that today, and there were some places that if you call a particular part of the body, it was -8 to hit.
Wow.
Well, it makes sense. Like if you really think about like Brisby trying to hit like a demon's eye in the midst of combat, like that's a tough thing.
Yeah, I think it's situational, really.
It is, yeah.
If you're using a -4 and you need a 20 to hit, but after that -4 it is a 20, tie goes to the creature, you're hidden, and that's just an absolute total miss. And it's because of that -4 you missed. I just feel like you should at least have hit something. If you're taking that concentration to hit that one spot, you're bound to hit something if it was if you're that close.
And maybe the damage is less than your normal damage as a way of counteracting that.
Yeah, because it would be like a glancing blow. Like you were aiming you put force into this area, but you missed. So maybe you got like a little glancing shot or like a chip or something, or a little slash.
Yeah, I almost feel like that's one where there's got to be some kind of penalty to the roll just because.
Well, that's why I like taking away a roll dice or making it disadvantage or.
Yeah, and a lot of the rule sets that I read about were disadvantage and -4, disadvantage and -8. It was like, whoa.
So when you do that, what's the benefit?
Yeah, I mean, like the things that I was reading about, it said like well, you got +2 to all your damage die. And I was thinking, well, that's not really a good trade-off.
No, it's not.
I mean, there was quite a few situational things that could happen. Like you could hit him in the armor and cause that area to be weakened, or it opens up a spot in the armor and that becomes an advantage for the next attack. That would be useful, when you're up against an opponent.
Yeah, because I was thinking of, the thought I was having is on a successful hit is double damage. That's your bonus. Plus, it would be up to the DM's discretion. How would this affect that creature? I got my eye on the eyeball, and Brisby, he loves going for those eyeballs, and you hit a creature or anybody gets hit in the eye, that's going to almost take you out of the combat. So I mean, that should definitely be.
Yeah, I mean, you basically have a blind side.
Yeah, severely incapacitated.
As a creature, I would want to hang out on that side and use that to my advantage.
Yeah, maybe the advantage of calling a shot isn't necessarily about the damage, but more about how it affects the creature you're fighting from that point on in the battle. Maybe they have disadvantage from that point on, because that almost seems like more of a benefit than double damage, because you didn't get as much damage as you'd like to have with a normal call shot. However, from this point on, it should be easier for everybody to take it out.
Yeah, if you got some big knight that's attacking you and you want to take out his elbow because he's just wailing into people with his sword. Mm-hmm. If you make a call shot at his elbow and you get it, you may fracture his elbow and you can't get all these massive hits like he was. So make it kind of I guess it will have to be the DM's discretion of what does he think makes sense in the situation of this type of damage that this creature just took.
Right.
You're slicing him in the Achilles heel.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Jess would love that one.
You could throw in a variable of surrender or flight as well. Like most animals, once you take one of their eyes out, then it's going to severely motivate them to not continue the fight. Like if it's a wild creature, it might flee. If it's a humanoid, it might surrender. Some stuff, it might just enrage them even more.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
And they become unpredictable. They just go crazy.
Stop flailing wildly.
R.A. Salvatore has an interesting way of handling, when he runs a game, critical hits, which could almost play into this too, where when you roll a 20, or in this case, if you make a successful attack on a call shot, you also roll a D100, and 1 to 90 is you get double damage. 90 to 95, I believe, is triple damage, and then 95 to 100 is an instant kill, which I think that's kind of interesting, and that could almost play into the call shot, where if we chose to roll
I like that.
Yeah,
it's pretty fun.
The percentage of killing it is very small, which for a DM, it's always hard. Like in the past, not even in our game now, but in the past, call shots have always been used to try to take out, the big bad guy at the end of the, and because the DM doesn't want to see that guy go out and, one round from a called shot. That's kind of a bummer, but like this gives it a chance. It's a small chance, but it gives it an opportunity to actually do that kill. Because a lot of times in the past, called shots were used as kill shots, I think, over just, doing more damage. I'm like, I want to cut this guy's jugular.
Yeah.
Yeah. I definitely agree. It kind of reminds me of also being able to disarm someone. You don't see that happening too much anymore either.
No.
Wasn't that a skill?
Yeah.
I think it was.
Riposte or something?
Some fighters actually have, or there's some kind of feat.
Yeah, there's a disarm, I think. I know the Battle Master has one of those maneuvers, but I think it was even before that, it was part of a normal thing that you could do. In addition to call shot, you could disarm them.
I think there was parry, riposte, and maybe another one.
I would think that disarm would have to be more of a skilled thing, because that's not easy to do.
Well, the called shot could be like you slice their wrist, and they can't hold the sword any longer, or something to that effect.
Or a called shot could be to disarm. You may maybe you want to just disarm somebody and not kill them.
Right.
So you're going to make a called shot to knock his sword out.
In that case, as a DM, like depending on the level of the character and in the involvement of the encounter that they're in at that time, I almost feel like I would give that to them on a regular. I wouldn't even make them do a called shot if you're not trying to like damage somebody or kill someone, because there are times where like as a player, like you've reached 10th level or whatever it is at the time, you've been through a lot, you're a skilled and seasoned warrior at this point. Like I want the player to feel like a hero or someone that could do something that they wanted to do without having to make some crazy roll. But when it comes to doing damage, then I understand it, it's a little different. But outside of combat, I think a called shot would be a regular attack. In most scenarios, it would have to be, a case-by-case situation.
What I was thinking about earlier is learning skills. Isn't it in the rules that in your downtime, you can actually learn skills from other players? Because that's something that's never really used.
I would have to look that up. I do think you're right, though. That does sound familiar. I don't know if it was this edition. Was it this edition? Can you still do that?
I think I had talked briefly about it, almost from a role-playing standpoint. I wanted to multi-class Cal with a thief, and I was like, I can study or work with Brisby to observe him and pick up his.
Yeah, I like multi-classing when the multi-class, especially in a situation like that where it makes sense, where you're traveling with a party where you might pick up each other's skills here and there and they cross over and stuff like that. It's interesting.
I want to say that something about professions, like each character had a profession. I remember playing with a group and one of the guys was an artist. And so he would paint pictures and he would sell them in town for money. And then we would use the money to buy stuff or do whatever, to perpetuate the game and the story.
Yeah.
I think we had this discussion one other time where our backstories aren't really utilized so much. No. Once you spend the time to create a character, that would be a nice way to tie in sort of hey, I'm a smuggler, so I know these things. I know a guy. Mm-hmm. And, I want to be able to say, okay, so I've been on the river half my life, so I can read the water running in this particular creek right here. And that's a deep spot right over there. So you want to avoid it, stuff like that, where it's all gameplay and role play.
Yeah, and I think those smuggling skills should be able to be passed on to other players if you choose to take the time at, camps or a long rest or whatever's happening. Yeah. It makes for a well-polished party, whereas if someone screws up who should have been able to do it, at least it makes sense that person has a chance to try to do something at it. I guess that explains Arcana, too, like I was talking about earlier, where, the barbarian's making an Arcana check. It doesn't make a lot of sense, but if he's traveling with a wizard who's trying to teach him little things here and there, it makes sense, yeah.
Yeah.
Or if a wizard needs to learn how to use a sword. You got fighters with you. Why can't they teach you how to wield a sword?
Yeah, it is nice to have crossover skills, so you're more well-rounded, and everybody has an opportunity to interact with a situation. That's kind of nice too.
Yeah, I feel like that's something we in game we should maybe talk with the other party members about, just to kind of give an explanation for that, and maybe I don't know, like you said, polish the party over. That way, everybody has a chance to kind of get a shot at something that they maybe normally wouldn't get a shot at. That's interesting.
I did a little quick search and I saw one little snippet about, it mentioned dual classing, and it made it say dual classing by learning from another character.
Oh, okay.
So I'm kind of wondering, are they saying that if you want to dual class, it's got to be in a class that somebody can teach you? Because a lot of times when we dual class, we just pick something at random. And
right, yeah.
If I wanted to dual class, if I'm a wizard, I want to dual class as a, like a bard. Mm-hmm. And there's no bards in the groups. All of a sudden I'm just going to teach myself an instrument. I mean, should there be kind of guidelines as to when and how you can dual class?
It is a tough one because it kind of tells the player, you can't do this because this, I almost feel like there should be loopholes in a way where if you're traveling through a town, perhaps you come across a minstrel and you're, Wow, the loot. Okay, I love the loot. You kind of watch him for a little while, talk to him, maybe pay him 10 gold, and he teaches you some chords, and then you practice those out on the road. So I wouldn't say that it's completely out of the realm of possibility, but in weird cases, I do think there should be some kind of story element that explains why a character all of a sudden is doing this. And
it should fit in the story somehow.
But that's coming from a DM perspective. From a player perspective, I can understand playing like a wizard that all of a sudden, wants to be a warrior or so on and so forth.
I mean, I know I've done it before, and it's like I just picked one at random. It's like I think this would be really cool, but then you start thinking about it's like, how does this make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You think we've run the house rules into the ground for the evening?
That was an enjoyable discussion.
Yeah, I've always wanted to talk about it, especially when the call shots came up. I thought it was a perfect opportunity to sit down with you guys and have a conversation about other house rules and other things that, we'd love to see incorporated into the game. So
moving forward, I mean, okay, if call shots come up next Wednesday, how are you going to run it?
I have no fucking idea, Jim. For the time being, I would say disadvantage over a -4 personally. I know you're against the idea of giving any kind of, on the front end of things, giving that the disadvantage or the, not the benefit, but the withdrawal, I guess. I guess if it comes up and you guys get into a fight tomorrow night, as a matter of fact, in our game.
It is tomorrow, isn't it?
Yeah, I would say for the time being, I would say disadvantage most likely. But the results will be a little bit more beneficial, whereas not only are you going to get, I would say, max damage to your initial roll, but you'll get that extra roll on top of it. But on top of that, whatever body part or whatever you're trying to achieve through the call shot will have a longer lasting effect, probably in some cases giving a disadvantage to the creature that's attacking you guys.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. Did that also use like the bonus action to call the shot, or would that just be disadvantage as sort of that flat thing?
Or you're going to put a limit on how many times you can do it?
Yeah.
Definitely once per target, I would say. You can change targets after, like if you're in one round, you're attacking one enemy and you want to turn your focus to another enemy. As long as I would say you're not in melee. No, that's a tough one. That gets tricky too, because if you're meleeing somebody doing call shots and then you switch to somebody else, I almost feel like this person that you've been attacking gets advantage at that point because you've shifted your call shot to somebody else. Your focus is somewhere else. I don't know. It would have to be a case by case scenario, like I said before, but like I think initially it's a disadvantage, but the benefits are going to be more long lasting and once per target. And if you shift targets and the other creature is within melee range, maybe they get an attack of opportunity or maybe they get advantage on their next attack against you. That's probably how I'd handle it on the fly. I'll iron it out and I'll send it around, but I think that's how I would do it.
Yeah, that makes sense. I was just thinking that you, if you flub the call shot, then it would maybe bring the ire of your opponent against you, and there should be a consequence for that.
Yeah, I think if you miss, they get advantage on the next attack or something like that.
Yeah. Or an attack of opportunity.
Yeah, one way or the other.
Yeah.
It's funny how something as simple as coming up with a house rule for call shots can get so in depth.
Well, I think that's why in D&D things are so vague, is because they can't even figure it out.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many angles that you can look at things.
I think it's important every now and again to sit down like this and talk about things like this that you don't normally talk about, like what house rules do you want to incorporate as players into the game, which ones don't you want to, and how do we want to make them work. And working with you guys to actually iron them out makes it easier for me in the long run as a DM. So I appreciate you guys coming out and spending the night with me and coming up with some ideas and talking about house rules and home brews and call shots and all kinds of things.
Yeah, man, it was great. Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Really enjoyed talking to you guys tonight.
Absolutely, man.
Don't go to sleep with a catch it in your pocket.